Tonight's the night. Hey, great to have you here. And we're finally here, the series premiere of Dexter Resurrection. So I'll be covering each episode of the show after it airs. But this week's going to be a little bit different since we got 2 episodes. So I'll have episode 2 up pretty soon. And for the format here for these episode reviews, I'll be going through the episode details, giving my thoughts as we go, sharing if I liked or disliked the direction, and then giving a final episode rating of it either being negative, neutral, or positive. Although for this first episode, I can't really hide things. I was super excited about it. So we start things off here with getting a summary of events of everything that took place within Dexter New Blood, really just to catch everyone up to speed. And we didn't get any sort of intro like we had in Original Sin or the original series. It seems like the editing overall is following in New Blood's footsteps, or should I say blood trail. So after that opening recap, we advance to 10 weeks later of Dexter in the hospital. And laying in bed there, he starts to imagine past killers of Trinity and Miguel Prado. I thought these were excellent cameo appearances by both John Lithgow and Jimmy Smits. I don't know if we'll get any more of them throughout the series, but it really worked here with Dexter being in a coma to set up these imaginary encounters. And then we cut over to Harrison working a job at this hotel, and here's where we'll give a little bit of critique. Somehow after only 10 weeks, he appears to know and be close with everyone in the hotel, knows all of the local places, and even got his GED. It just seemed like a little bit fast for all that to take place, but I'll more or less forgive it. Harrison then starts seeing some trauma from shooting his dad, which kind of proves that killing Dexter in New Blood wasn't actually good for him. I'm glad they're not afraid to disregard that whole concept that got introduced in New Blood, which honestly, they chuck out a lot of stuff from New Blood in this episode, but we'll get there. We then cut back to Dexter in the hospital, and he's now talking to Harry. Of the imaginary people in this episode, James Remar probably appears to have aged the most, but that's totally understandable. I'm just happy to have him back, and he immediately reminded me how much I really liked his dynamic with Dexter in the original series. And during their conversation, they travel to the infamous shipping container that we've seen about 1,000,000 times now if you're a Dexter fan. Here we see the kid versions of Dexter and Brian in blood, and we have Harry talking to Dexter about being a father. And I think these are actually the same kid actors from Original Sin. We get to see Brian a little bit better, and he definitely is. Then we cut back to the hospital where Dexter sees his final ghostly figure, James Dokes.
Surprise, mother...
It was awesome to have Dokes back for the first time I assume since season 2 of Dexter. And here we surprisingly have Dokes tell Dexter to take care of Harrison. So that's the general message thus far. Dexter needing to live to protect Harrison. Dexter then wakes up or is resurrected, and the doctor tells him that he was close to death, but it was actually the cold that saved him. Which is obviously still a retcon, but since I'd rather have Dexter here alive, I'll allow it. We then cut back to Harrison at the hotel, and he sees this couple. The girl seems to be super out of it, and we're clearly pitching the guy that she's with as being very creepy. And as things progress, we're getting very over-the-top assault vibes from him as he's trying to bring this girl back to his hotel room. And I'd say this character was a bit of a negative for me as far as complete believability and being so open with Harrison about everything that he's doing. Harrison initially walks away, but then he heads back and fights the guy. During their scuffle, the guy winds up saying there's plenty of more girls, and then Harrison freaks out seeing the girls that were taken by Kurt Caldwell down in that basement. So then Harrison just kind of snaps here and winds up killing the guy with the toilet lid. After realizing what he just did, Harrison then brings the girl back to her own room and then tries to clean up everything as Dexter taught him. I'll try not to hammer this point too many more times, but it's super interesting how killing Dexter was supposed to put Harrison on a clean path, and literally the first thing we see of him is him being traumatized from having done that and then killing someone. So once again, the New Blood ending kind of gets validated as not being what was best for Harrison. And as Harrison's chopping up this guy in the kitchen, a blood spot gets put on the ceiling tile, but for now he gets things mostly cleaned up and gets the body taken away by the trash people. We then cut back to Dexter, and he eventually asks himself kind of what we're all wondering, why is he not in a prison hospital, and where's Angela? As he's wondering that, suddenly we get Officer Reed from New Blood showing up as the acting sheriff. And here it's pretty wild how they try to do a quick cleanup of the ending of New Blood by saying Angela left town. In her note to Dexter, she says they're even for Dexter having found Kurt. Sheriff Reed then says that the coach's bullet was found, and it proves that Dexter killed him in self-defense. Going even further than that, the sheriff then asks Dexter if he wants to press charges against Angela in the sheriff's department. Obviously, Dexter says no, but I'm just so shocked on how the writers weaseled their way out of this season either being Dexter on the run or on trial, which I guess he still somewhat is on the run, but we'll get there. And I'm overall fine with this writing decision to pivot away from New Blood despite it being full of so many holes. It essentially allows Dexter to somewhat be Dexter again, which I thought was pretty impossible given the corner that he'd put himself in. We then cut away to a sanitation worker throwing around some trash bags, and the body parts of the guy that Harrison killed and cut up suddenly go flying out. The police and detectives then get called, and they're trying to figure out where this came from. Detective Wallace, I think is her name, is kind of being pitched as this super genius detective, and she's putting on music to try to focus, and notices that the bags with body parts are tied pretty uniquely, so then they find the full body, except they notice that the guy's wristwatch is missing, which he wound up giving to Harrison actually earlier in the episode, unrelated to Harrison having killed him. And it definitely felt like music was a big aspect for this episode, Harrison and the detective both focusing on their work while listening to it. We then cut to Dexter, who's walking back into his hospital room, and he sees Angel Batista there waiting for him. He winds up telling Angel what he did with Deb's body and why he had to leave Miami, moving on from his old life due to Deb and Rita being gone. Angel then tells Dexter, or probably more importantly us as the viewer, that Angela told him that everything that she originally said about Dexter being the Bay Harbor Butcher was actually a mistake. So it seems like in the end, Angela wound up having Dexter's back and kind of wiped her hands from things clean here. Not sure if we'll wind up getting her later on in the show or not, but for now it seems like she's kind of stepped away. But then we do get a little bit of tension build up when Angel adds that Maria also thought that Dexter was the Bay Harbor Butcher. And before leaving, Batista says that he undid Dexter's death certificate, so Dexter Morgan is now alive again, officially resurrected. And to me, this whole scene is setting up vibes that Batista is ultimately going to be the one that catches Dexter in the end, which would probably be fitting. We then briefly cut over to Harrison, and he sees that the detectives show up to the hotel, and they're investigating the room of the guy that he killed. And then shifting back over to Dexter, we get a pretty funny line by him during physical therapy. He goes, "Sorry, I'm just not used to being on a table with somebody over me," obviously fitting since he's normally the one putting people on his table. And then during that session of physical therapy, the girl that's working with him brings up this dead body that's been found in New York City. Dexter hears that the body was cut up into 9 pieces and then immediately thinks that it could have been done by Harrison since Dexter taught him that. I do think that it's super convenient that the girl brings this up during the session with Dexter, but once again, I'll look past it. But pretty much the takeaway of this discussion is that Dexter is suddenly afraid that Harrison may be in trouble with the police, and he thinks he needs to go to New York City to help him out. Before Batista shows up for the day, Dexter opportunistically grabs the set of keys from a guy who died in the hospital bed near him. Once again, pretty convenient, but I'll allow it. He then calls the clinic, actually pretending to be Quinn and asking for Batista to serve as a distraction. It also felt like this was a way to give a brief nod to Quinn as a character. It makes me think that maybe that's all we'll get of him, but I still hope at some point we get Quinn in person. Dexter then heads out the window and takes off in the car. He stops to buy a new outfit, including an iconic pair of gloves. Batista winds up getting pretty antsy waiting for Dexter, and after 45 minutes, he winds up busting in his room to see that he's taken off, so very clearly now, he's hunting Dexter. We then for the first time cut to Uma Thurman's character, and she's investigating this apartment and taking pictures. I did notice that one of the rooms looks like the room that Dexter's in from one of the trailers with the PC behind him. She then winds up looking behind one of the ceiling tiles to find a bunch of IDs that seem like it's somebody's trophies, and she leaves behind a bunch of money and a letter, I'm assuming maybe to recruit this guy. I'm sure we'll find out more with that plot in the future, but for now we shift over to Dexter, who is now in New York City with Blitzkrieg Bop playing. And I definitely noticed a lot more music in this episode than I'm used to with Dexter, especially songs that I knew. And we pretty much close out the episode with Dexter rolling up to the hotel and seeing Harrison, due to Dexter perfectly timing Harrison coming outside. We do get some pretty jarring visuals for the end credits that I wasn't really a big fan of, but at least the music is similar to what we're used to hearing. But overall, this episode knocked it out of the park for me. I enjoyed our brief cameos. I thought both Dexter and Harrison were enjoyable in their separate stories, which is a point that I made in my wishlist video. I wanted Harrison to have more of an interesting character arc here, and it seems like we may potentially get that. I definitely dislike when shows have multiple plots running at once, and you get one of the plots that's always a bummer to have on screen. So thankfully we didn't get that here. We got multiple ideas that are all compelling. Sure, we got a lot of conveniences here, but for now, I'm able to suspend my disbelief due to how much fun I had with this episode. It's likely obvious by now, but I'm giving episode 1 of Dexter Resurrection a positive rating. As mentioned at the beginning, I'll be putting out my episode 2 review pretty soon here, but let me know your thoughts on the series introduction. Did the choices the writers make work for you? Let's talk all things Dexter Resurrection in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to talk to you again soon.